Chapter 4, Part 8. The fear of freedom is greater still in professionals who have not yet discovered for themselves the invasive nature of their action, and who are told that their action is dehumanizing. Not infrequently, especially at the point of decoding concrete situations, training course participants ask the coordinator in an irritated manner, "Where do you think you're steering us anyway?" The coordinator isn't trying to steer them anywhere. It is just that in facing a concrete situation as a problem, the participants begin to realize that if their analysis of the situation goes any deeper, they will either have to divest themselves of their myths or reaffirm them. Divesting themselves of and renouncing their myths represents, at that moment, an act of self-violence. On the other hand, to reaffirm those myths is to reveal themselves. The only way out, which functions as a defense mechanism, is to project onto the coordinator their own usual practices: steering, conquering, and invading. This same retreat occurs, though on a smaller scale, among men of the people who have been ground down by the concrete situation of oppression and domesticated by charity. One of the teachers of Full Circle, which carried out a valuable educational program in New York City under the coordination of Robert Fox, relates the following incident. A group in a New York ghetto was presented at a coded situation showing a big pile of garbage on the street corner, the very same street corner where the group was meeting. One of the participants said at once, "I see a street in Africa or Latin America." "And why not in New York?" asked the teacher. "Because we are the United States, and that can't happen here." Beyond a doubt, this man and some of his comrades who agreed with him were retreating from a reality so offensive to them that even to acknowledge that reality was threatening. For an alienated person, conditioned by a culture of achievement and personal success, to recognize his situation as objectively unfavorable seems to hinder his own possibilities of success. In the case cited, and in that of the professionals, the determining force of the culture which develops the myths men subsequently internalize is evidence. In both cases, the culture of the dominant class hinders the affirmation of men as beings of decision. Neither the professionals nor the discussion participants in the New York slums talk and act for themselves as active subjects of the historical process. None of them are theoreticians or ideologues of domination. On the contrary, they are effects which in turn become causes of domination. This is one of the most serious problems the revolution must confront when it reaches power. This stage demands maximum political wisdom, decision, and courage from the leaders, who for this very reason must have sufficient judgment not to fall into irrationally sectarian positions. Professional men and women of any specialty, university graduates or not, are individuals who have been determined from above by a culture of domination which has constituted them as dual beings. If they had come from the lower classes, this miseducation would be the same, if not worse. These professionals, however, are necessary to the reorganization of the new society, and since many among them, even though afraid of freedom and reluctant to engage in humanizing action, are in truth more misguided than anything else, they not only could be, but ought to be, reclaimed by the revolution. This reclamation requires that the revolutionary leaders, progressing from what was previously dialogical cultural action, initiate the cultural revolution. At this point, revolutionary power moves beyond its role as a necessary obstacle confronting those who wish to negate humanity, and assumes a new and bolder position, with a clear invitation to all who wish to participate in the reconstruction of society. In this sense, cultural revolution is a necessary continuation of the dialogical cultural action which must be carried out before the revolution reaches power. Cultural revolution takes a total society to be reconstructed, including all human activities, as the object of its remolding action. Society cannot be reconstructed in a mechanistic fashion. The culture which is culturally recreated through evolution is the fundamental instrument for this reconstruction. Cultural revolution is the revolutionary regime's maximum effort as conscientikau. It should reach everyone, regardless of their personal path. Consequently, this effort at conscientikau cannot rest content with the technical or scientific training of intended specialists. The new society becomes qualitatively distinct from the old in more than a partial way. Revolutionary society cannot attribute to technology the same ends attributed by the previous society. Accordingly, the training of people in the two societies must also differ. Technical and scientific training need not be inimical to humanistic education as long as science and technology in the revolutionary society are at the service of permanent liberation, or humanization. From this point of view, the training of individuals for any occupation, since all occupations occur in time and space, requires the understanding of a. Culture as a superstructure which can maintain remnants of the past alive in the substructure undergoing revolutionary transformation, and b. The occupation itself as an instrument for the transformation of culture. As the Cultural Revolution deepens conscientikau in the creative praxis of the new society, people will begin to perceive why mythical remnants of the old society survive in the new, and they will then be able to free themselves more rapidly of these specters, which, by hindering the edification of a new society, have always constituted a serious problem for every revolution. Through these cultural remnants, the oppressor society continues to invade, this time invading the revolutionary society itself. This invasion is especially terrible because it is carried out not by the dominant elite reorganized as such, but by those who have participated in the revolution. As men who house the oppressor, they resist as might the latter themselves the further basic steps which the revolution must take. And as dual beings, they also accept, still due to the remnants, power which becomes bureaucratized and which violently represses them. In turn, this violently repressive bureaucratic power can be explained by what Althusser calls the reactivation of old elements in the new society, each time special circumstances permit. For all the above reasons, I interpret the revolutionary process as dialogical cultural action, which is prolonged in cultural revolution once power is taken. In both stages, a serious and profound effort at conscientikau, by means of which the people, through a true praxis, leave behind the status of objects to assume the status of historical subjects, is necessary. Finally, cultural revolution develops the practice of permanent dialogue between leaders and people, and consolidates the participation of the people in power. In this way, as both leaders and people continue their critical activity, the revolution will more easily be able to defend itself against bureaucratic tendencies, which lead to new forms of oppression, and against invasion, which is always the same. The invader, whether in a bourgeois or in a revolutionary society, may be an agronomist or a sociologist, an economist or a public health engineer, a priest or a pastor, an educator or a social worker, or a revolutionary. Cultural invasion, which serves the ends of conquest and the preservation of oppression, always involves a parochial view of reality, a static perception of the world, and the imposition of one world view upon another. It implies the superiority of the invader and the inferiority of those who are invaded, as well as the imposition of values by the former, who possess the latter and are afraid of losing them. End of Chapter 4, Part 8.